Okay, today we need to simplify these expressions, okay? This is how you put it into simplified form, okay? Simplify. So you have 8, that's a base, and you have x, that's a base, okay? Now between the bases you want to put a multiplication dot, okay? And then the 2 is a power, P-O-W-E-R, and the 3 is a power, okay? Now write out your two bases, 8 and x. So you get 8 times x, okay, just like that. Now we need to figure out what powers are on these, okay? So here's my 8. Now I'm going to put a power with the 8 because 8 right now doesn't have a power. See, the x has a power of 2, but the 8 needs a power. If it doesn't have one, you put a 1, and that's going to be your power, okay? Okay, so you got 8 to the first, 8 to the 1 power, x to the second power, and then you have this 3 power outside of here. So to find the power of your 8, you take the 1 to the outside, the 3, not the 2. You go outside, okay? So I'm going to take 1 times 3, and that's 3, okay? So the 8 is going to be to the power of 3. Now the x, I take the power on the x, which is 2, and I also connect the 2 to the 3. So to find the power on the x, we multiply 2 times 3, and that's 6. Okay, so it's x to the 6th. Now this x to the 6th we don't do anything with because that's a variable. Okay, but this 8 to the 3rd I circle because I need to simplify that. So I come over here and I write 8 to the 3rd equals, and then I put down 3 8s, 8, 8, 8. Okay, time, and put multiplication because that's what you're doing with a power. There's 3 of them because it's to the 3rd power. So on a calculator, I take 8 times 8 times 8, and that's 512. Okay. So what we do is we replace this 8 to the 3rd power with 512, and then since the x is a letter, okay, we can't do that, so x to the 6th, and that's your answer. Okay. Stick with me now. Okay. Next problem, we have a base 5 times a base of y, and then the 4 is a power on the y, and then the outside power of the quantity, the parentheses, is a 2, so power. So I have 5 times y, okay? Now we got to figure out what the actual powers on these are. So 5 needs its own power, because right now the 5 doesn't have a power, so I use a 1. You always use a 1 if you need a power there. So it's a 1 power. So what I do at the 5, I take the 1 from the inside times the 2 on the outside. So 1 times 2 is 2. Okay, so it's 5 to the 2nd power. Now the y, okay, the y has a 4 power, so I take a 4 times a 2. Okay, see, I don't put a 1 with the y because the y already has its own power, which is 4. The 5 needs its power, which is 1. Both the bases need powers, 5 to the 1, y to the 4th. So on the 5, I take 1 times, or on the y, I take 4 times 2. Okay, so 4 times 2 is 8, so y is to the power of 8. Okay, okay, now the 5 to the 2nd power I need to simplify. So I can't simplify the letter, okay, but the number 5 to the 2nd power I can. So 5 to the 2nd. So now I put 2 5s because it's to the 2nd, and I multiply. Okay, and then 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, so I replace this 5 to the 2nd with the 25. So 25 times y to the power of 8. Okay, the y8 stays the same. Okay, next problem, I have 2, which is a base, and then right next to it I have an x, which is a base, so the 2 and the x means multiplication, okay? And then the 3 is a power, okay? And the 4 is a power. When it's to the above it to the right, it's a power, okay? So base, base on the 2 and the x, and then 3 and 4 are your powers. Okay, so I write down my two bases, 2 times x. Then the power on the 2, well, first off, 2 needs a power. See, x already has a 3 power. 2 then would automatically, I would put a 1, okay, and it's a 1 power. Okay, so I take 1 times 4, and that will find the power of the 2. So 1 times 4 is 4, so it's 2 to the 4th. Then on the x has a power of 3, but I need to multiply it to the outside, and 3 times 4 is 12. Okay. Okay, so x to the 12th. Now, the 2 to the 4th I simplify. Okay, so I write 2 to the 4th equals, then I put 2, 2, 2, and 2, and then multiplication signs between them. And then I find what 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 actually equals. Okay, and that's going to be 16. So we replace the 2 to the 4th with 16, and then the x stays to the 12th because I don't have a number that x is. It's a variable. Okay. Okay, my next problem, I've got 8, which is a base, and then I put times x, which is a base, okay, and then the 2 is a power, and the 3 is a power. So my bases are 8 times x, okay. Now the 8 needs its own power. See, the x has a 2 power, but the 8 needs its power, which should be 1, and that's a power on the 8. Okay, so 1 times 3 is 3, so it's 8 to the 3 power. And then on x, I take 2 times 3, and that's a 6, so it's x to the 6 power. Now, the 8 to the 3rd I figure out. Okay, so 8 to the 3rd is 8 times 8 times 8. Okay, and 8 times 8 times 8 results in a product of 512. Okay, so we take out the 8 to the 3rd, and instead of 8 to the 3rd, we now replace it with the 512 times x to the 6th. Okay, pause the video and do 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and then come back to me. Okay, now on the next problem, this is a little bit different. We have 2 as a base, times the x as a base, the 3 is a power, and the 2 is a power. Now we also have another base of x, okay, and the power is 4. So what I do is I have 2 times x, but since there are 2 x's, I just put the x down one time, okay. Now, there's only one 2, okay, but there's 2 x's. There's 2 base x's, base x, so I put a plus sign like yesterday. But not on the 2 because I only have one base 2. So on the 2 I put a power of 1, okay, and then I take the 1 times this outside 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. So we have 2 to the 2nd power. Now let's talk about the x. So the first x I have is to the 3rd, so I take 3 and times it by the 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. So I have a 6 power, and then the other x is not in a parentheses like this x was. So this x I don't times, I just put 4 down, okay? And then I add 6 plus 4. 6 plus 4 is going to be 10, okay? So 6 plus 4 is 10. Now I simplify it just like I did the last one. So 2 to the 2nd. So I write the base 2 twice and times it, and 2 times 2 is 4. So I take this out and replace it with 4. So 4 times x to the power of 10. Okay, next problem. 6 is a base, x is a times, x is a base, and then I have another x that's a base. Okay, so I have 6 times x and there's another x. So all that means I do is I put a plus sign on the x because there's 2 of those. There's only one base of 6, so that one doesn't need a plus. Okay, so remember, 2 is a power, 3 is a power, and 5 is a power. Now 6 is going to need its own power, and it's a 1, okay? So to find the power on the 6, I take the 1 power, and since it's in parentheses, I take 1 times 3. You're distributing 1 to 3. 1 times 3 is 3. Don't go out here. You go right outside the parentheses. Now the x, okay, this x here has a 2 power, so I take 2 times 3, and that's 6. So before the plus, I put 6. Now my other x has a power of 5, and it's not in parentheses like this one was, so I just write down 5, okay? And then 6 plus 5 is 11, so 6 to the 3rd power times x to the 11th. Okay, then I need to simplify this 6 to the 3rd power. Not the x I can't, but the 6 to the 3rd. I go 6, 6, 6, and then multiply, okay? So 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. So I replace 6 to the third with 216 times x to the 11th. Okay, next problem. 3 and x, that's times, and 3 is a base, and x is a base. And then I have another x that's a base. So the 3 is a power, you can just put p. 2 is a power, and 10 is a power. Now, so I have 3 times x as my bases, base 3, base x. There's another base x, which means I'll just add what the powers are. So a 3, that needs a power, so I use a 1, and that's my power. So to find the 3 power here, I take 1 times 2. Okay? So 1 times 2 is 2. So 3 to the 2. Now x, so here's my first x, that's a 3, but I need to distribute outside, and 3 times 2 equals 6. So I have 6 in front, and then I have this 10 that's not in a parentheses, it's the power to the x, and it's not in a parentheses, so I put a 10 here, okay? And then 6 plus 10 is 16, so I have 3 to the second times x to the 16th. Then I figure out what 3 to the second is, okay? It's simply 2 3's that multiplied, and that's 9. 3 times 3 is 9. So this is replaced with 9, and the x stays the same. It stays its power, so 9 times x to the 16th. Okay. See, because I can't calculate with x. Okay. So x to 16th is as simple as you can make that. Okay, 7 times x, so base, and then I have a base of x, a power of 4, a power of 2, a base of x, and a power of 3. Okay, so my bases are 7xx. So again, I don't write x down twice when I simplify with exponents. Okay, x times x means I will just add the exponents. And then 7's a 1. Okay, now that's a power. So I take 1 times 2, not to the 3, the 2. That's the one right outside. So 1 times 2 is 2. Then x, okay, the first x I have a 4, but then that's in parentheses, so I have to take 4 times 2, okay, and that's 8, so I'm going to have 8 in front of the plus. Now the other x is a 3, but there's no parentheses around it, so then I don't multiply here, I just put 3. And then 8 plus 3 is 11, 9, 10, 11. So 7 to the second times x to the 11th. Now 7 to the second can be simplified, okay. So that's 7 times 7, and 7 times 7 is 49. So we replace the 7 to the second with 49. So 49 times x to the 11th is your answer, okay? All right, and you have then the backside.